How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. And this week, we are going to do something a little bit different. We are going to be talking about Tito Santana, only we're not going to be talking about his whole career. There are other podcasts, other shows, possibly documentaries. You could do that. We are going to be looking at strictly his WrestleMania matches. And we are going to go through those matches, give our thoughts on those matches, and then we're going to rank them, and you can either agree with us or not. But just before we get there, we should go over a little bit about Tito. He was born Merced Solis, and he's from Texas, despite being billed from Tocula, Mexico, which is not even a real town. Toluca is possible misspelling or mispronunciation of that. But anyway, he trained under Hiro Matsuda and Bob Orton. He was actually signed by the Kansas City Chiefs, but was cut when he injured his ankle and his Achilles heel. And I guess that resulted in a poor 40-yard dash run. And he was with the WWF from 1979 to 1988, and many forget that stint. But he then went to AWA from then until 1983. And I will say this about his AWA run. If you guys only know him from his WWF days, you really need to go and search out some of those AWA matches, because his matches with Nick Bockwinkel, which are not easy to find, are very good. He was really in top form there. So he had some good stuff going there. And then in 1983, he began his long run in the WWF, which is what we're going to discuss here. So, Leonard, are you ready to get started here?
Yeah, definitely.
You got all your Tito thoughts. Are you ready to go?
I have before we get started, just a comment. I think Tito Santana is one of the best workers of all time and probably very underrated today. If I was going to make a list of my top 100, he's definitely in that. He's probably top 50. Great all-around worker, could work with anybody in different styles, different types of matches. Not great on the mic, but could get his point across.
Right.
Engage with fans very well, was very charismatic. And, these WrestleMania matches we're talking about, and we should mention that, excuse me, a big tip of the top hat to my buddy Ronnie, who came up with this idea. He was giving us some show suggestions. One was, hey, rank weird stuff nobody else would rank, like Tito Santana's WrestleMania matches.
We could definitely do that. We're from 411.
Yes. So that's why we're doing this, and we may do other odd rank lists in the future. But this was a really interesting one to start with. I watched all these matches over the weekend before filming today. And, I'm interested to go back and watching all these WrestleManias now, because especially some of them, like in the middle, like 5 to 9, I was like, oh, I don't remember a lot of these. Anyway, let's get going, and I think what we're going to do is talk about them in order, and then we're going to give our rankings and some stats about Tito's WrestleMania history.
All right. Well, obviously, we were going, well, maybe not obviously to some people out there, but we are going to start with WrestleMania 1. He was on WrestleMania 1. His first match was against the Executioner, and that match was 4 minutes, 49 seconds long, and in case you weren't aware, the Executioner in this case is played by Buddy Rose. I will say the outfit and the mask that Buddy Rose is wearing here look horrible. It looks like it was just thrown together. It looks like, I don't know if this happened. I have no idea. It looks like he got to the arena that day and they were like, you're going to be the Executioner and you're going to face Tito Santana. Do you have anything to wear? I have a black cutoff t-shirt and some black tights, and I could throw together a mask. Okay, cool. Like that's what it looked like to me.
You know what? From what I've heard, you're not far off. That apparently he had just joined the WWF from the Portland area, where he was a pretty big name. And I can't remember what road agent it was, but one of the road agents wanted him on the show, but not to lose on the show. So at the last minute, they came up with the idea of throwing him under a hood so nobody would know who he was. So it was like, yeah, let's grab a hood and a T-shirt. And he actually has tape on his boots over his name. So you can't see his name.
You know those hardcore WrestleMania 1 fans that look at the boots.
Yes.
But no, Tito's fine here. I mean, he was young and hungry here, so I mean, his work is fine. I don't think the match is anything special. Judging by what you just said about Buddy Rose not wanting to lose, I don't know how much of his heart was in it, but the match was what it was. It's a rare victory for Tito on this list. But what do you think about this match?
Well, I've mentioned to you before too to maybe doing what I call the wrestling rebook, where we look at a show and rebook it how we would do it, given hindsight and who was available. And definitely for the first WrestleMania, I would use Buddy Rose as Buddy Rose, and I would probably move Tito Santana to the IC title match with Greg Valentine, because that was the hot feud at the time.
Right.
And they didn't know what WrestleMania was going to be, so I think that's the idea why we didn't get the blow off to that. I mean, traditionally, you probably would have gotten the Valentine versus Santana blow off here, but you didn't. This is basically kind of an extended squash to get Tito over. And even as short as it felt a little bit long. Like they could probably did what they wanted to do in half the time. Right. And I agree with you on Rose. I think being under the hood, he came off awkward because he's not used to working that way. And I don't think his heart was in it. Anytime they would get momentum going, he would, get knocked out of the ring. He got knocked out of the ring, I think, 3 times. And my favorite time was the third one because he does like a flip and he lands in a chair at ringside. Like he just lands sitting in the chair. Like he meant to, like he was just like he could have grabbed a beer and was like, I'm watching the matches, And another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you my spot of the match for every match that we're talking about.
Oh, there you go.
And my favorite spot here is Tito has a side headlock on the Executioner, walks the near corner, flips over, and does a side headlock takedown into a pin attempt from walking the corner. Great spot in a pretty blah match. I'm also going to give star ratings. Out of 5 stars, I'm going to give this 2 stars. It's not actively bad, but it's certainly below average.
I feel like this might have been one of the matches where Gorilla made a comment about, well, I've never seen anybody get pinned with a side headlock, but
yeah, I think he does say that.
We're going to talk a little bit about Gorilla as we go along here. I miss his commentary, but
yeah, I think he's on all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, not 9. That's a little bit different. We'll get to that.
We'll get to 9.
He's on all the other ones, I think. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to WrestleMania 2. He is tagging with JYD, and he's in the Los Angeles portion of WrestleMania 2. He's with Junkyard Dog against the Funk Brothers, Hoss and Terry, which, Dory is a cool name too, but I don't know, something about Hoss Funk,
Yeah, I don't remember what. I think it was Vincent named Dory for some reason, but I don't remember why.
Who knows?
They went with Hoss because of Bonanza, but I don't remember the whole backstory on that.
So this match clocks in at 11 minutes and 42 seconds. And what's interesting here is, that the Funk Brothers go over here, but their time in WWF was not long. Terry was out of there pretty quickly after this, and I think Hoss Funk stayed on for a little bit with tagged with another gentleman who actually wasn't an actual Funk.
Yeah, Jimmy Jack Funk, which was really Art Barr, brother of Jesse Barr.
Right. So they were.
Or I may have that backwards. It might have been Jesse, brother of Art.
That's all right.
Yeah, put an asterisk of the correction down there if I was wrong on that.
This match, you also have Jimmy Hart around, and I'm watching this match. Terry Funk is just so good. He's such a great worker to watch. As I get older and I discover, because he hopped around to different promotions, I discover more matches by him as I get older that I didn't know about before, and he's really so great to watch. And the one of the notes that I had here is just Tito's selling, which we'll probably mention more than once on this list. His selling in this is really, really great. This was JYD that was past his prime, as has been talked about a lot on the podcasts that Conrad Thompson does. But the match was okay. It had some good performances, and it had some performances that were just kind of, pretty mediocre, I would guess. Overall, it was okay for what it was. But those are my notes. Leonard, what say you?
Yeah. I don't think there was any history going on here. I don't think Tito and JYD was tagging regularly. I don't think they had any sort of feud going with the Funks. I just think this was a match to get these guys on the card.
Right.
But they did a nice job of building animosity at the beginning. There's kind of a showdown where Tito has a chair and Dog's got his chain. And I thought they did a pretty good job of just establishing that we don't like each other to start with. But even with that, there's a lot of starting and stopping to begin with. I think they could have done what they wanted to do in half the time. Again, I think they could have done more with less here, as I said in the first match. My spot of the match here is actually two different ones kind of that come right after each other. Terry Funk tries to get Santana up for a suplex, and Santana blocks, and he's like, Terry's got him half up, and he starts kicking and fighting, and I've never seen a guy fight that long.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
Yeah, and like in that position, and get held up that long in that position. And then right after that, Dory comes in and does a butterfly suplex with a float over to a cover, which I just thought looked pretty, especially for a guy as rough looking as Dory / Haas.
Right.
I don't know what to call him here, but that was really nice. Terry Funk spends half the match on the floor. And
he does. He spends a lot of time outside.
Yeah, and towards the end, he takes a really awkward-looking table bump.
Yeah,
he hits it and it slides off, and it doesn't break, which I don't know if it was supposed to break.
Yeah, back then, those tables weren't designed to break so easily.
There's a couple things that we're going to talk about where I go, oh, that's like old school. Like, you wouldn't see that today. Like a table that wouldn't break with him. There's one spot that I question if it was a botch, where Terry was coming off the ropes and he kind of half tripped, and then he fell and like hung himself up on the ropes. Like, I don't know if that was a botch, but then Tito clotheslines him to the floor. So if it was a nice recovery. It just seemed like a weird spot. Like, why would he get himself hung up in the ropes like that?
Right.
Other than that, the ending kind of broke down. I thought the ending was a bit of a mess with all the interference and what they were trying to do.
Right.
Comparatively speaking to the last match, I like this better. I think it's a pretty good tag match, especially with the guys trying to build something out of nothing here. And I would give it 2.5 stars out of 5.
Right. All right, so let's get to WrestleMania 3, and this was obviously one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time. He is with the he's with the British Bulldogs here, Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid, and he is going against the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis in a 6-man. It clocks in at 8 minutes and 52 seconds, and before I give my thoughts here, there was obviously this one, unlike the previous match, this one had some story to it. Leonard, do you remember some of the story going into this?
Oh, well, yeah. We talked about this a little bit when we did our referee show with Danny Davis, that Danny was a referee and that he was throwing some matches to guys managed by Jimmy Hart. So that eventually led to him getting suspended and becoming a wrestler under Jimmy Hart. And he helped the Hart Foundation to win the tag belts from the British Bulldogs. And he screwed Tito out of an IC title match. So that will end up being his beef with him. So that's the storyline here, and it dominates most of the match, I think.
Right.
And if you know, anytime Davis tags in, the crowd is in for it. Like, they get really hot. He tags in twice, where all he does is like kick the guy already down, like gloats and tags out. And they just get so hot for that.
Yeah, it was almost nuclear heat for him here.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of angles that I think people forget. Like, I mean, and this crowd this is a huge crowd, as has been talked about ad nauseum over the years. But you can hear them boo him each and every time he gets in the ring. So in that, and one my notes here were this match was pretty much all about Danny Davis.
Yeah.
Everything that happened was kind of talked about with, revolved around him. Tito is not in it very much. But the one note that I made is that he made the most of his time. He was explosive and really made himself known when he was finally tagged in. And on a side, unrelated Tito note, you have Dynamite Kid here. And, again, if you only know Dynamite from his WWF run, you're missing out. His stuff in Japan and Canada is really great if you can track it down. But this match had a lot of good people in it. The end was a little bit awkward for me, but I liked what I saw up until that point. So those are my notes. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, on the ending, I think it's a little anticlimactic. Again, it was like booking in hindsight. Today, we probably would have had the faces go over. Where back then, I think the idea was we need to keep this going, so they have to get the win here, because it looked totally like they were going to get the revenge on Davis here, and then he winds up using Jimmy's megaphone to steal the victory. Also, Tito has a really sweet ring jacket. If you're still looking for something for Christmas for me, the Tito Santana WrestleMania 3 ring jacket should be on your list. My spot of the match is when the Hart Foundation slingshot splash Davis in from the apron, and he eats knees on Dynamite Kid. I just thought it was a cool spot.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. See where is there here? I love the quick tags throughout on both sides of the ring. Davey gets a jumping pile driver, which I liked. I thought that was a good spot too. You didn't see a lot of that back then. I think this is really pretty solid up until the finish, and the fact that it didn't go the way that probably it should have. But again, the storyline extended, but I think you could have done that with them still getting a good win here. And again, I like this a little bit better than the last match. So comparatively speaking, I'm gonna give this 2 3/4 stars.
All right. So we'll move on to WrestleMania 4, which is obviously the big tournament WrestleMania, but Tito is not in it. Instead, he is a part of Strikeforce with Rick Martel, and they are defending the tag team championships against Demolition. And the match is 12 minutes, 33 seconds. Strikeforce would lose. And this was a really good match, I thought. Demolition had just a ton of momentum going into this. They looked, super badass with their music and their ring attire. And on a side note, I really loved Strikeforce's music and their jackets. You wanted the jacket from WrestleMania 3. I would prefer one of the Strikeforce jackets. So
those are nice too. The white with the red trim.
Absolutely.
And their theme song was "Girls in Cars" by Robbie Dupree.
Yeah.
Which was part of I believe the second rest of the Pile Driver album. I think it was on the second album. Yes.
But no, so yeah, this was a really good match. I'm a big Demolition fan, and I did like Strikeforce, and I thought these guys really added a good tag match in an event that was at the time a lot longer than what fans were used to. I mean, if people remember, this was a double VHS cassette. So, Leonard, what do you think about this one?
You're right at the beginning. This was kind of a coming out party for Demolition. They'd been building over the past few months. Strikeforce had won the titles from the Hart Foundation, and even though they didn't tag very long, Strikeforce was a great tag team. Basically, Tito stepped in to replace Tom Zink in the Cam-Man Connection when he left, and I'm surprised they didn't call them the Mexican Connection, with Rick being the Canadian there in the group. I've mentioned before that I've done a lot of different fancy wrestling leagues and stuff. And I would say 9 times out of 10, if someone drafts Martel or Tito, then they get the other guy and they form Strikeforce. So even though they weren't together very long, Strikeforce has a legacy, which is fantastic because they were a really great team. My spot of the match is actually kind of a subtle one. Tito goes for a crossbody on Smash. He grabs him into a bear hug and then kind of moves slowly back to his corner. And with the referee not paying attention, clotheslines Tito.
I like that too. Yep.
From the apron. It was just a subtle little thing because he didn't make it showy. He kind of hit it so the ref wouldn't see it. But it was just a subtle little bit that I really liked. Classic tag formula here with a nice long heat segment on Santana. The finish felt awkward to me because it looked like they were trying to fight to get everyone in position, like Fuji in position to drop the cane in position, to get Axe in position to get the cane, where the ref is positioned to get knocked so he can hit the cane. And it was all like these gears that weren't quite syncing up right. So ending takes a little bit off of it for me because it just didn't quite come out the way it should have. But other than that, this was a great match again. On the 5-star scale, I would go 3.5 stars.
All right. So we'll get to WrestleMania 5 here. And once again, Tito is a part of Strikeforce with Rick Martel, and they are going to be facing the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. This match clocks in at 9 minutes and 17 seconds. And this was a great match really all around. And, in my opinion, this was probably Tito's best in-ring performance on this list. He was just really great. He had a lot of work to do because of the storyline going on with Strikeforce. And this match, I think, accomplished a lot. Like, it furthered that story with Strikeforce, even if it didn't really pan out in a super wonderful way. There wasn't really a super huge payoff with those two guys, but it also really more like it established the Brain Busters really well. And the Brain Busters, obviously they had Bobby Heenan with them, in case anybody didn't know that. But it was a really good performance. I love the Brain Busters finish, always have. That's a great finish.
Yeah, Spike Power Driver.
Yeah, and only positive things to say about this one. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I would agree with you there. The one thing is I believe they mentioned in commentary here that Strikeforce hadn't tagged for a while, and I believe that was because Martel was injured.
Yeah.
And from what I know, when he came back, just everyone thought he would make a better heel and wanted to turn him heel. So that's one minus. While they worked the storyline very well, I think it kind of comes out of nowhere.
Right.
Like what I would have done is have the Brainbusters win here via face miscommunication, and then have like a storyline running throughout the summer and then do the turn at SummerSlam. That's probably what I would have done. But for what they do here, they do it great. Tito accidentally hits Rick with flying forearm, and then he does a fantastic job of like overselling the shot.
Yeah, to like the nth degree. Yeah,
he's doing like this thing, like like his brain's going to explode. And then he refuses the tag and he walks off, and the crowd immediately goes to heat for him, which is great. And kind of a funny thing to me is that Arn and Tully don't care.
Right.
Like Martel walks off and they just keep beating Tito's ass. They just don't care. And that really speaks a lot to them. I mean, on paper, excellent matchup. I would love to see this kind of be just straight on and be like twice as long, like a 20-minute match. I think it would have been fantastic. A nice hot start with some good double team spots to begin with. My spot of the match might be the test of strength spot, like on the mat between Arn and Rick. Rick is just trying to press Arn's shoulders down, and he's coming up, and they're kind of fighting on the mat, and they turn that into actually a pretty good segment, a longer segment that gets the crowd into it. I also like there's a bridge up into a backslide spot between Tito and Tully, which was also a really good spot. The double figure 4 spot I think could have been worked a little bit more. Rick and Tito get the heels in a figure 4, and it's over real quick. I would have worked that maybe a little bit longer.
Right.
Maybe even have them both turn it over, so then they've both reversed it, and then they're working the reverse, something like that. Here's me fantasy booking, this fantastic match. But so yeah, they worked the storyline well. Excellent match all around. Not a lot of minuses outside of I think the storyline came up a little too quick with the turn. But I'm going to give this 4 stars out of 5.
Yeah, and I was, as you were talking there, I was remembering the commentary here with Jesse and Gorilla, and this might be a little bit of a controversial choice, but Jesse and Gorilla are probably my favorite announcing team together. Which is a precursor to a future show. But I really love them here. Like Gorilla, asking like what Martel's doing, and Jesse's just like, well, it's obvious he's injured. It's like when
maybe he's gonna go get some medical help and come back. You don't know.
And like Jesse throughout all these is just, he lays it on Tito Santana as much as possible, always calling him Chico, making fun of him as much as possible. And Bobby Heenan would continue that trend when he picked up color commentary along the way. But it's just really great stuff. The commentary here.
Now we're on the downhill slide.
Yeah. So WrestleMania 6 is Tito Santana against the Barbarian. The match clocks in at 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Tito has a new red shirt, which I always remembered him having.
Yeah.
And he has that music that to me was very famous. And this was not really a match that anybody would remember because it was pretty much just used to push the Barbarian.
Mhm.
And I feel like it was around this era. There was a different event, maybe it was the SummerSlam, where Tito was pretty much in the exact same position against the Warlord. And obviously the Warlord and the Barbarian being the powers of pain at one time. And Tito jobbed to the Warlord as well. So this is the way he's being used at this point in his career. He's been around for a while, and he's being used to push these other guys. Again, I noticed Tito selling more than anything else, which just to, as an aside, when Leonard and I talked, off air about Mickey James's recent comments about some of the half selling that goes on in wrestling today, you don't see that with Tito Santana. His selling is just really, really great. And on a side note with the commentary, again, this is where, like, I miss some of these old commentators, like Jesse and Gorilla here. This is a match that's nothing. And I'm sure you would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
But the commentators sell this match as if it is a classic combination of guys. And it's not. But they make it seem much bigger than it really is. And I miss that. But those are my thoughts. What do you think?
Well, you're right. This is basically to push the Warlord. The powers of pain had broken up. Slick
Barbarian, you mean?
The Barbarian. I'm sorry. Slick got the Warlord. Bobby Heenan got the Barbarian. So this was just to push him. And I was actually a little bit surprised. I thought he was more athletic than I remembered him being. My favorite spot of the match was one in where he's got Tito hoisted up in the middle of the ring, and Tito is like punching him in the face.
Yeah.
I've seen guys do that spot in the corner, so they're like they have something to lean against. He is just standing straight up with like a 230-pound man on top of him, punching him in the face, and he's fine. He's just standing there. And then he also does a rope walk elbow drop that misses, which probably would have been my favorite spot if he would have hit that. So this was around a little bit of a time where Barbarian was getting a push. So there's no real angle here other than to push the Barbarian some. This should have been Rick Martel versus Tito Santana. As you mentioned during the last match, we never got, I don't think on TV at least, a good blow off to what should have been a really good feud between those two guys. See, there's a hot finish, but Santana just can't catch a break. He seems to always get hit by the heel manager. The heel manager does something to distract the referee, and so he's always losing. So when Tito loses, he's losing through nefarious means.
Yeah.
And this is really at a point where I think they realized he was great at helping put over other guys, and he was kind of on the other side of his career in popularity, but he couldn't get damaged. Like, he could lose till the end of time, and crowds were still going to pop for him.
Yep.
He was still going to be believed to be
He was one of those journeyman talent. It's the type of talent you want in your locker room. Not that I've ever, been a promoter, but I would assume that he's really good in the locker room, really nice, affable, and, is eager probably to help other people. So.
Yeah, from what I never heard anything bad about him, I don't think. I know he was a favorite of Andre the Giant's. They used to play cards together in the locker room from different stories that if you were Andre's good side, you were on everybody's good side pretty much. Right. So star rating, I would give this 2.25 stars, which might surprise you, but I actually was surprised by how good this was considering how short it was. Again, a lot of it is through Tito selling and the Barbarian being more athletic than I remember him being.
All right. Well, we will move on to WrestleMania 7. He is going against the Mountie. And this match, it clocks in at a whopping 1 minute and 21 seconds. I have nothing to say here. I mean, Tito loses, due to the cattle prod, and it's a squash. I don't really even know why it was on the card. I know why it was on the card. I guess they wanted to push the Mountie, but I don't see how this really did it a lot. But hey, Tito is willing to do business as he always is, and there it is. Leonard?
I question this. This was the sub main, so I question whether this was going to be like a 5-minute match, and they had to cut it because of time.
This was like what they call a let me up match, but it really wasn't much of a let me up match.
Yeah, it's the one where it's the bathroom break match before the main event. But it seemed like they did the first minute and then jumped to the last 30 seconds is what it feels like to me. And even as short as it is, I will give a spot of the match when they do a double crossbody and slam into each other and do a double down.
Yeah.
Downey rolls out of the ring, and then Tito gets the double noggin knocker between him and Jimmy Hart. And that's always a hot spot, especially back in the day when you clock the heels' heads together. So, yeah, like you said, other than that, there's not a whole lot to comment on. Tito takes the and again, great commentary. Bobby Heenan said that, it's just something he ate. All that Mexican food just gets to your gut. Like, it wasn't the taser. It was like, oh, he's just having a stomachache. So, they try to sell it. But, yeah, it's a turd of the match. Turd of a match. I give it a dud.
Yeah, and, imagine if it is a let-me-up match and you're going to go to the bathroom or get another beer and somebody's like, oh, Hogan's coming out. We're like, what? Shit,
Yeah, it's like I thought I had time here.
All right. So we'll move on to WrestleMania 8. He is El Matador at this point, and he is going against Shawn Michaels, who is with Sensational Sherry. This match clocks in at 10 minutes, 38 seconds. And I like this from start to finish, really. It's pretty straightforward. I would say Shawn, despite being really good, is still maybe a little bit rough around the edges at times, but that's not necessarily a knock. I just think that he became more refined and smoother in the ring as he went along. But this is a really good combination of technical wrestling and high flying. And, I liked it a lot. I thought it was good for what it was. I thought it was pretty appropriate length considering the two people involved. And, I would definitely give this one a thumbs up. What do you say?
Yeah, one thing here that you have to mention is all the peripheral stuff. The commentary here is fantastic. It's
It really is.
Bobby Heenan, and they are both on fire. As Tito comes out, Reba McEntire is leaving the ring, who's saying, I believe it's America the Beautiful, which they usually do at WrestleMania. And Bobby says it's his sister, Arriba McEntire, which wouldn't fly today.
No,
And then later on, I can't remember what the spot was, but it was something where they were like, oh, he's not going to give up because of that. And he said, oh, I had a guy give up. And Monster was like, you in a match? And he said, yeah, I have a guy give up once during construction. I mean,
yeah, it was the side headlock comment again.
Oh, was it the side headlock again? Okay. I didn't write down what the spot was, just Heenan's comment. And then Sensational Sherry's with Shawn Michaels here, and she doesn't really get involved, but she's a presence. Like you know she's out there.
Oh yeah, always.
The entire match. And there is a segment where Tito gets knocked to the floor, and she's just hovering behind him, but the referee's watching. And he gets back in the ring, and they cut to her, and she's like biting her glove because like she wanted to kick Tito Santana so bad.
Yeah,
it drove her nuts that she didn't get at him. And I don't think she gets enough credit for helping Shawn Michaels along during his initial singles run.
No, I would agree.
And you can really see how much he leans on her as they enter, as they leave. Like he's taking his cues from her, and it was fantastic. Yeah, the match now the match overall is great. We get another hot start. I think Tito matches usually have really hot starts to them before they settle down a little bit. I like how Shawn gets Tito on the first mule kick they do to the corner and gets over top of him and takes him out. But then when he tries it again, Tito catches him. So Tito learned. They always love that when they repeat a spot and the guy does it a different way because he learned from the first time.
Right.
So that was great here. They worked the headlock position well into a heat segment, which a lot of times it's a rest hold. But they got the crowd behind it by all the little things they were doing within it. Great selling by Shawn Michaels, of course, throughout. The slingshot forearm by Santana is probably my best spot of the match. The finish I thought was just a little bit out of nowhere to me. And, of course, one thing, too, we talked about things you don't see. Shawn Michaels hits the super kick, which is not the super kick. It is, I believe, Gorilla calls it something like a side crescent half kick or something.
Reverse crescent kick, yes.
Yeah, reverse crescent kick or something. And then it leads to the teardrop suplex, which was his original finisher. I don't remember which game it is on the Super Nintendo, but there's a Super Nintendo game where that's his finisher. And I used to love to do that for whatever reason. him and the Macho Man elbow were like my favorite finishers to do in that game. And it's basically a leg trap suplex called a teardrop because the way you fold the leg looks like a teardrop with the bend of the leg.
Right.
But I actually liked the teardrop suplex. And when I write the fantasy matches I talked about in the fantasy league, I sometimes work in a teardrop suplex. I'm actually using Sean and Marty as the Midnight Rockers, so original Rockers, and the one Fed that I've talked about them doing right now. So he uses the teardrop like all the time. This is Wild Question Tito's, I think, best singles match that we've watched. And I would give this an easy, I wrote down 3 stars. I might even go higher than that, 3.25.
Yeah, and just an aside, as we were talking about some of the terms that Gorilla would use with the crescent kick, there in one of the matches he talks about oh, he's delivering those reverse knife edges, and nowadays you just say chop.
Yeah.
But I think reverse knife edge should be brought back from time to time. That's just my opinion. So our last match here is WrestleMania 9, and this match can be found. It is available on the network through the Hidden Gems section, but it also is available on, if you Google search it, you'll find it. And
how I found it on the network was it's not part of WrestleMania 9. So I was like, well, I'll look up Papa Shango because there's probably not a lot of Papa Shango matches. And it actually comes up because it's Jim Ross's first match on commentary for the WWF. So that's why they have it labeled and it's on there, because this is Jim Ross. And this was not ever aired. So you actually have Jim Ross doing asides to Bruce Pritchard,
which are great. Yeah.
Who apparently in his ear talking to him. There's one spot where Tito hits the flying forearm, and he said, that seems to be, his favorite maneuver, but I don't know what it's called. Bruce will have to tell me later.
Yeah.
And it's
great stuff you would only hear on dark matches. And Ross was on play-by-play here because Gorilla was apparently ill and not able to do the entire show. So yes, this was probably, I would guess, his very first ever match that he ever called for.
I believe it is. So it is outside of maybe some like test matches when they like brought him in, to Stanford. But as far as being, I guess, something findable on a show, yeah.
And this match clocks in at 8 minutes, and it's very workmanlike. Not the best blending of styles, but it was a match, and it could have been worse. So we talked already about the highlight, which I thought was Ross's commentary with talking periodically to Bruce Pritchard. The match was what it was, and it was a Tito victory, which was cool to see. So again, the ending was a little bit weird, which seems to be a trend as we're discussing these matches. I wonder how much throughout all these that have weird endings that the time is a factor. Like, okay, go home now, and the ref is like, tell him to go home. So who knows? But those are my notes on that. So Leonard, why don't you give your thoughts?
Yeah, before we're talking about the match, I gotta say the shadows were weird. Like parts of the match,
It felt like the lights weren't totally on or something.
Yeah, we're like in deep, deep shadow, and other parts still had like the natural sunlight. This was, of course, outdoors in Las Vegas.
Right.
And WrestleMania 9 is considered one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. So if we do the wrestling rebook thing, WrestleMania 9 will have to be on the list.
Yeah.
Of course, Papa Shango is Charles Wright, who is also the Ultimate Fighting Machine, Mustafa, and The Godfather. And again, much like the Barbarian, he comes off as way more athletic than I remember him being.
Right.
He does a leapfrog. He does some drop kicks. He just does a few athletic things. He does a roll through on a crossbody, catches Tito and rolls through it. Which is a nice spot for him. This is the only time I remember a referee catching a guy pulling the tights, because he's pinning Tito and he's got a handful of tights, and the ref catches him and calls him off. I never remember a ref seeing that before. So that I actually wrote that, and I forgot this, that is my best spot is the ref catching the tight grab. Shango has a good sidestep on the forearm try. Again, I'm very impressed by him from what I remember the character. As you mentioned, kind of an abrupt finish coming off of what seems to be a miscue by Papa Shango. It's a bit blah, but it's okay. And I think it's just brought down by everybody knowing this wasn't going to be on TV, so
Right.
you weren't getting 100% from anybody here. But still, a serviceable match, like you said. I would go 2.25 stars out of 5 on the
Right.
rating.
And you know what? Tito, after this, was not long for WWF after this. It was in August after this event that he was out of there. And so this was his last WrestleMania. So before we give our rankings, Leonard, why don't you give some quick trivia facts?
Sure. So Tito is 2. If you count the dark match of WrestleMania 9, he's 2-7 on WrestleManias, and he's the only guy other than Hulk Hogan to work all of the first 9 WrestleManias. Of the matches, he's in. If you count the dark match, he's in 3 openers, so that would be 1, 8, and 9. He's in 3 sub-main events, believe it or not, which are 2, 4, and 7. There's 3 tag matches, 1 6-man, and then the rest being all singles matches.
Right. And, I think we can, agree looking at this that Tito was a guy that they really did look at as a reliable person in the ring. He would do whatever was asked of him. One wonders if he, had maybe more of a bold personality backstage or spoke up maybe a little bit more. Who knows if he would have gotten a little bit more of a push or maybe some different roads, but he was there to do a job and he did that job really well and still does it from time to time. He is a teacher in New Jersey. He teaches Spanish. He coaches basketball and wrestling, and he seems to have a really good career in life going for him. So,
2 things to mention before we get to the rankings. One is I met Tito Santana once at a autograph show in Parsippany, New Jersey, and he had, I believe it was the AWF title belt with him that he let me and my buddy Dan just mess with. I've got the title belt over my shoulder and I've got my foot on Dan, I just pinned him for the title, and he just let us do whatever we wanted with the belt, and was really cool to talk to. And that was a fun show. Sergeant Slaughter was there too, and Greg Valentine. And then I can't remember the other. The other point I was going to make was the fact that Tito came kind of on the end of, this is more Vince Sr.'s thing than Vince Jr., but the idea of having guys that were of a specific ethnicity and appealed to a specific ethnicity. Bruno Sammartino was Italian. Pedro Morales was Puerto Rican. Tito Santana, even though he was born in Texas, he was billed from Mexico.
Right.
Appealed to the Hispanic fan base as well. So I think that was the idea, that he was our Hispanic guy. And when Vince Jr. took over fully, I think that idea of I have to have these ethnic boxes ticked for guys. Ivan Putski, Polish. There's another example. Right. So I think maybe that was a thing, that if it was still Vince Sr. and that we have to push the ethnic guy, he may have been on top longer than he was. Right before this was probably, right before the first WrestleMania, I should say. It was kind of his biggest, when he was IC champion, feuding with Valentine, doing all that. So,
right. Well, let's get to our rankings.
All right.
I will start here.
Okay.
And I'll start from the bottom.
Okay.
So I would put my number 9 would be WrestleMania 7 against the Mountie. I would put my number 8 as being WrestleMania 1 against Buddy Rose. Number 7, I have WrestleMania 6 against the Barbarian. Number 6, WrestleMania 9 against Papa Shango. Number 5, we'll put with JYD against the Funk Brothers. Number 4 would be the British Bulldogs teaming with Santana against the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis. Number 3 would be, this is a close one. See, this is where it gets hard for me. Number 3, I'm going to put WrestleMania 8 against Shawn Michaels. And number 2, Strike Force versus Demolition, WrestleMania 4. And my number 1 would be WrestleMania 5, Strike Force versus the Brainbusters. And I'm not going to go on too much about the rankings other than just to say I think Tito really did well as a in tag team matches, and I thought that his Strikeforce tag team was really his best period. I liked the work that they did. So, Leonard, what are your rankings?
So here's the problem with you and me is we agree too much. So there's no arguments, so we can't get into things.
We didn't have any differences?
Almost.
Okay, there you go.
So number 7 is versus the Mountie. Again, a dud of a match. It's way too short.
Number 9.
Number 9, sorry. It's WrestleMania 7, which
WrestleMania
is
7,
number 9. Number 9 is against the Executioner, a.k.a. Buddy Rose, at WrestleMania 1. Here's where we differ. I've got Papa Shango at 6, and then Barbarian above that. Again, I've lost my track of my numbers because
we'll have to put a list display so that
so bottom Mountie, Executioner, Papa Shango, then Barbarian. That's where we differ.
Okay.
Because I think the Papa Shango match, again, it's a dark match, and nobody saw it. They're not really as into it. I mean, it's longer, but doesn't mean better. And again, I was more impressed with the athleticism of the Barbarian and what they were able to do in the shorter match there. But then everything else above that is the same. JYD versus Funk Brothers at WrestleMania 2, then WrestleMania 3, the 6-man tag. At number 3, I have Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 8. Strikeforce versus Demolition at WrestleMania 4, and then versus Brainbusters at WrestleMania 5. And again, those top 3 are all really close. I would, at one point, I almost went Demolition over Brainbusters. At one point, I even wanted to sneak Shawn in that second slot, but I didn't. So again, aside from a slight disagreement on the matches at 6 and 9, we agree. So I don't know if that's just that we're of the same mind, or just how consistent Santana is, and how.
I don't think there's a lot of room for argument here. I mean,
not a whole lot. I
would come out and said, the match with the Barbarian is like really great. I love it a lot. It's my number 3 pick. I'd be like, okay, well, that's a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real dividing line, I think, from. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like 5 down and then 4 up is right. A real solid dividing line. And that bottom 5, I think, is pretty easy to rank. The top 4, I think you could shuffle the deck a little bit there, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, before we head out here, we'll just list some of his WWF accolades. We've already made mention of some of those. He was the Intercontinental Champion twice. He was WWF Tag Team Champion twice, once with Ivan Putski. That was in that initial 79 to 80 run. And
right. Again, you got your Polish guy and your Mexican guy teaming up.
And why wouldn't they? Mexican and Polish. Hey.
Yeah, it's to appeal to the 2 ethnic pockets they were trying to appeal to.
Absolutely. And he was King of the Ring in 1989. Now, this was when the Ring wasn't televised. It was done at some house shows, just kind of as like a special attraction type event, something different for some of these house shows.
Yeah, I did not know he was King of the Ring. I knew that they did that. I think Junkyard Dog was the original one.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was like a house show tournament. Yeah,
some of them are odd. If you go over some of those original King of the Rings, you're like, wait, whoa, and he was inducted in the Hall of Fame in the class 2004. So, yeah, not really any final thoughts other than what we just said about him, but just that he was a reliable guy. I always enjoyed watching him. He was one of those reliable journeyman talents that a roster only could benefit from having. So on that note, those are our rankings. If you disagree, if you think that the Mountie match deserves to be number 1, let us know.
And argue that point, because I want to hear it.
Yeah. So that's what we have to say about Tito Santana's WrestleMania matches. And we will come at you with another weird ranking down the road here. Maybe we'll do best pets in wrestling matches.
Oh, that's a good one. I'd be down for that one.
All right. So for Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next time.